Welcome to the Dan Sports Tips Daily Fantasy NFL Preview Show for Christmas Eve, Saturday the 24th of December, Week 16 of the NFL season on DraftKings. I'll be taking a look at everything you need for your daily fantasy games on DraftKings this Saturday. I'll be looking at offensive stacks and players that we can use in other positions as well. For anyone that hasn't had the opportunity to sign up and play daily fantasy sports with DraftKings this week, I will pop a link in the description beneath this video that will enable you to do that today and join in on the fun this Christmas. Jumping right in with offensive stacks, the Indianapolis Colts quarterback Andrew Luck for $7,000, wide receiver T.Y. Hilton for $7,800. Against the Oakland Raiders, this looks like a shootout with two very proficient offenses, two poor defensive units on display. I can't stack the Raiders. Basically, Derek Carr has not looked the same since the finger dislocation, and the offense does seem to be struggling a little bit with the snaps coming from the shotgun. So I will take the Colts in this game that profiles as a shootout. Obviously, the concern with this is that Luck won't have the time to throw the ball if Irvin and Mack do get going, but he has got mobility. He's shown that time and again to evade the rush all year long. T.Y. Hilton is his best receiver, with Dante Moncrief banged up as well. There's every chance the two could have a vintage game against the Oakland Raiders defense that does rank just 21st against the pass in Football Outsiders DVOA. After a quiet week against the Vikings brought his run of 100-yard receiving games to an end at 2, I'm going to look for Hilton to rebound, and Luck will need to eclipse the 300-yard barrier in this game, you would imagine, if the Colts are to stand any chance of getting a positive result. The New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady for $7,700, Malcolm Mitchell for $5,200. Mitchell is cheap. I can only assume because of his low numbers against an excellent Denver Broncos pass defense last week. He is, however, on the field often for the Patriots offense. He should see a great deal more success playing outside against a Jets defense that ranks 32nd in DVOA against the pass. Tom Brady at quarterback fell just shy of 300 passing yards against the Jets when the two teams met just a few weeks ago, but the wheels have really come off for the Jets in the last few weeks, and all signs point to the Pats having their way at Foxborough this week. Mitchell scored twice in the first game between the two. I'm going to look for a solid hookup using this stack again this week, as the Pats hope to wrap up home field throughout the AFC playoffs. I couldn't put you off stacking Edelman either. Just leaning slightly towards the upside and cheaper alternative in Mitchell this week. We do know that Edelman will see volume, and the Jets do struggle defending receivers in the slot. The Chicago Bears quarterback Matt Barkley for $5,000, wide receiver Cameron Meredith for $4,700. This is my bargain basement stack this week. It allows you to pay up at other positions. Barkley's achieved 300 yards in 2 of his 4 starts this year. Of those 4 starts, we can throw out that game in awful weather against San Francisco in the snow. He's feasted on poor pass defenses throughout his run as a starter. He draws the Redskins, who are on short week this week, and their subpar pass defense. The Redskins score some points, which could lend itself to Barkley having to throw the ball more as well here. So it looks like there's plenty of opportunities and routes to Barkley throwing the ball a lot. Meredith has not been the most productive receiver in most of Barkley's starts. That being said, with Josh Norman potentially shadowing Alshon Jeffrey this week, I would rather go with Meredith, who exceeded the more productive Deontay Thompson in targets last week, and that's a more likely result that will happen again. And I think targets gives us a more sure way to predicting production. And the New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees for $7,400, wide receiver Michael Thomas for $6,000. Brees in the dome. That is pretty much all you need to say for the New Orleans Saints. I almost didn't put this stack up because I do think it will be popular this week after the Saints' outstanding performance on the road in Arizona last week. But sometimes the obvious shootouts are where you need to play. We stack with Michael Thomas, as while the Buccaneers defense is reasonable against the pass, they do have a soft spot in rookie Vernon Hargreaves. He's likely to be lining up opposite Thomas more often than not in this game. Let everybody else jump on Brandon Cooks, who had the huge game last week in tandem with Brees. He's a more expensive price this week. Michael Thomas is the play. There aren't any defensive stacks as such that I like this week, so I'm going to sort of just play defense separate to running backs. Looking at quarterbacks we can use, Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons for $7,200. Ryan seems to have a fairly high floor in this game, leading the best passing attack in the NFL. Carolina have had issues against the pass this year, but they have improved as the season has gone on, and they did a reasonable job against the Redskins on Monday night. That being said, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones did link up in Julio's 300 receiving yard game against Carolina earlier this year. Jones' availability is a bit of a question mark. How healthy is he actually going to be if he does play? Which is why I'm not stacking with Ryan here, but he has proven that he can produce numbers without Julio Jones in any number of games this season, and I think Matt Ryan is a very solid quarterback play, even on his own at 7,200 this week. Looking at running backs this week, I think there's a lot of options for us. Todd Gurley of the Los Angeles Rams for 6,500. So, Gurley goes for 39 yards on 14 carries last week, and his price increases by $2,000. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all you can say about that is that's the San Francisco 49ers run defense. They are terrible. Gurley has looked terrible himself all year. Last year's Offensive Rookie of the Year has failed to reach 100 rushing yards in any game this season. And with Jared Goff looking out of his depth and showing an inability to stretch the field, there is every opportunity the 49ers won't have to respect the pass in this game. All that being told, though, there is not going to be a better opportunity for Gurley to get that elusive 100-yard game than this, and it's now or never for him. I'm not going to have a lot of shares of Todd Gurley this week because of the price. I just can't bring myself to do it at 6,500. There are better options for less money, but Gurley does have to be included, I feel, somewhere against San Francisco, and as such, he will be included in my rotation of lineups somewhere. Jordan Howard of the Chicago Bears for 6,300. Howard has been a model of consistency for the Chicago team that will face the Redskins coming off a short week. The Redskins' run defense has been poor all year, ranking 26th in DVOA. Howard has achieved a floor of 77 yards in 8 straight games, has 2 performances where he's scored over 30 DraftKings points in that same time span. It's far from unfathomable that Chicago could have some success in this game, and the keys are going to be Matt Barkley avoiding turnovers and Jordan Howard continuing to come up big for this offense. Latavius Murray of Oakland for 6,200. I don't like Latavius Murray as a football player. I'm going to start by saying that. I believe he's a product of volume. He's distinctly average. Last week he lost some carries to DeAndre Washington as well. So potentially the Oakland Raiders coaching staff agrees with me. Having got that out of the way, the ball should move up and down the field in this game. The Colts run defense is an atrocity that keeps on giving to running backs in fantasy football. Murray has 266 yards, 3 touchdowns over his last 3 games, so would seem to have a high floor with a risk of continued carries going elsewhere as a caveat, but certainly he's another one that there is a place for him in lineups this week. Ajayi of the Miami Dolphins for 5,600. The emerging star of Ajayi has got somewhat dim over the last few weeks. Arguably, he suffers a little bit from the change to Matt Moore at quarterback due to the injury to Tannehill. He is not as mobile as Ryan Tannehill is. All that being said, not only have we seen what Ajayi is capable of when he went back-to-back 200-yard games earlier this year, one of those performances was against the Buffalo Bills, who oppose again this week, and their 31st ranked rush defense by DVOA. I'm certainly willing to give Ajayi another go at this price this week against them. And I think he'll probably be fairly low owned on the basis that he's done nothing for 3 weeks or so. Jonathan Stewart of Carolina for 5,200 is a massively crazy price. It's too cheap. The Falcons' run defense is of similar rating in DVOA to Washington. Atlanta ranked 28th, Washington 26th against the run. Now, obviously, Stewart faced the Washington Redskins last week on Monday night with a lot of success gaining over 130 yards. This game does have the potential to have an awful lot of points in it, as Carolina look to have their say in the AFC South Division title race over these last 2 weeks of the season. Stewart has been getting plenty of work in recent games, and this is a nice matchup and a very reasonable price, particularly if Stewart receives 24 or more carries, as he has now done in consecutive games for the Carolina Panthers. And finally, at running back, Rob Kelly of the Washington Redskins for 5,200. I'm going to start by saying the return of Jarrell Freeman will aid the Chicago Bears' run defense that looked awful against the Packers last week. Nose tackle Eddie Goldman's gone to IR though, and he's also a big loss for the unit. He was out last week as well. Kelly has been something of an unattractive option running back in DraftKings due to the lack of participation in the receiving game. However, he has started to be more involved on that side of things in the last 2 games, giving him further upside, and this is a game that the Redskins absolutely have to have with the Giants going down on Thursday night. Kelly has found the end zone in each of his last 2 games. He has had fairly low yardage totals in his last few games, but this is arguably the worst defense he's faced in quite a while, with the Chicago Bears ranking 27th in DVOA against the run this season. Looking at wide receiver this week, you've got to find a place in your lineup for Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 8,500. He is uncoverable. He's a target monster, a huge red zone threat, and he gets the New Orleans Saints in the dome this week in what profiles as one of the likeliest shootouts this week. The short week is something of a worry, but I'm not concerned about the low-scoring game between the teams a couple of weeks ago, as New Orleans have massive home road splits and are vastly better at home, and as such, I am expecting the shootout that many expected a few weeks ago to occur this week. Even with the Saints' improvements, defending the pass this year, they shouldn't be able to live with Evans, who is very much due a big game after 3 quiet weeks. That may put other people off of him. The other thing to note is that the improvement in the Saints' pass defense came after the return of Delvin Breaux from injury. He has an ailing shoulder. He might miss this game, which is a massive plus for Evans as well. And even, as I've said at the top, that being said, Evans is uncoverable even by pretty much the best in the game. Ted Ginn Jr. of the Carolina Panthers for 4,500. In a somewhat strange turn of events, Ginn continues now to be the most consistent receiver on the Panthers at the back end of this season. He also gets some carries in the run game as well, draws a soft matchup with an Atlanta pass defense that is down their best corner in Desmond Trufant and was struggling as a unit anyway. Ginn is capable of both catching a long pass for a touchdown and also dropping a long pass that should be a touchdown. Historically, he's had stone hands, but he's looked a reasonably cheap upside play that has been catching the ball of late in a game that could have a lot of points in it, with the Falcons' passing offense in opposition ranking as the best in the NFL. Wide receiver Robby Anderson of the New York Jets for 4,800. Since Bryce Petty, who looks like he is going to be healthy enough to start this week for the Jets against the Patriots, came onto the scene, Anderson has emerged as a viable option, racking up points in the high teens at a relative bargain price in 3 straight games now. The Patriots' pass defense is the Achilles heel of the team and much maligned. It ranks 25th in DVOA on the year, and in a match that looks like a blowout, that scenario where the Jets are throwing often seems likely, which profiles well for Anderson. A touchdown, as Anderson has achieved in 2 of 3 games, would also be a very welcome boost to his production. And Tavon Austin of the Los Angeles Rams for $4,000. Who's going to have players in this game? He must be low owned, surely. The main area of weakness for the San Francisco defense are their linebackers, and as such, they've huge struggles against running backs catching the ball out the backfield, tight ends, and slot receivers. Austin could qualify as either a back out of the backfield or a slot receiver, depending on where they line him up. The speedy man could see plenty of targets, as the Rams have not asked Jared Goff to stretch the field, and his yards per attempt is somewhere just below 7, if I recall correctly. A repeat of the 11 targets that Tavon Austin received 2 weeks ago against the Falcons would be very welcome, and he's affordable at 4,000 as an upside play this week. Looking at tight end, Antonio Gates of the San Diego Chargers for 4,400. Quite simply put, the Cleveland Browns are an atrocity against the tight end position. Antonio Gates is the favourite and most trusted target of San Diego quarterback Philip Rivers. I'm not keen on the San Diego Chargers too much this week. I think it's a rough spot for them on the road in an early time slot, Christmas Eve, nothing to play for. And I wouldn't be massively shocked if Cleveland do win this game, but a position that often feels like playing bingo, Gates looks to offer some certainty, and he'll probably get some red zone targets as well, because, as I say, he has the trust of his quarterback. And my other tight end is Cameron Brate of Tampa Bay for 3,900. For the second tight end, I'm going to go back to the potential shootout in the Dome between the Bucs and Saints. Taking Brate, who's become a red zone threat, ranks second on the targets on the team in general, as well as in the red zone. The Saints are not good against the position at the tight end either, so Brate looks a rock solid option at 3,900 as well. My defense this week that I'm probably going to use in almost all my lineups is the Green Bay Packers for 3,300. I'd love to have used the Chiefs, but I'm obviously previewing the Saturday slate. They're not playing Saturday. I've decided to go with the Packers. They're a solid run defense and that have decent pass rushing options against the Vikings line that's been unable to create gaps for their running backs, Adrian Peterson included, even though I see he's out this week. Pass protection is also an issue for them. I'm not convinced that Bradford will have time to pick on the Packers' weak unit, which is the secondary. I don't like the Vikings to score a lot of points. I think there's every chance of some sacks and turnovers. I'm going to be using the Green Bay defense this week. That is what I've got for you this week. Have yourself a Merry Christmas. I will see you before the new year to wish you a happy new year as well. Please do like the video, subscribe to my channel, give me a follow on Twitter at dansports.tips. Let me know how you get on with your lineups, if I've been able to help with any of these players here, and I will see you next week. See you later.